Greetings, welcome back, and Happy New Year, everyone. This is WoW Killer. Despite our best efforts, we still haven't killed WoW, so Taliesin, you and I just need to get back on this podcast horse until we have killed the game.
We will. I'm confident. I'm going to take it while it's sleeping and while it doesn't suspect anything. While it's got its back to... I mean, I feel I could kill it in a fair fight as well. Mano a mano. I think I could do that. But why bother? Why bother when you can take it by surprise?
You're going to challenge it to a duel, which is a...
Well, no. I mean, I'll challenge it to a duel, and then when it's got its back turned, walk into its spot, then I'll shoot it.
I think that was the part of Classic. I wasn't really expecting to go, oh yeah, this is a thing we used to do. Being challenged to duels while...
Don't you duel in modern WoW, Garrett?
No, because I basically never have to wait for anything, but I'm constantly waiting for boats to take me around the world.
Don't you duel for nodes?
No.
Don't you duel for anything that we have any kind of dispute for in game at all? We duel that stuff out.
No.
We duel it out. That's how we work. That's how we roll.
Well, when I run across you, which would be really difficult to do since we play on different servers of the world.
Just as well, because I've got a feeling you'd absolutely destroy me in a duel.
We'll start dueling for who gets to intro the podcast. That's what we'll duel for.
Yeah. It's always going to be you, because I'm a very gracious host, Garrett, and I will allow you on my podcast. This is the third time you're back as a guest on my podcast. And I think it's really good. I mean, you're the only guest we've ever had, apart from Peculiar. I just like having you on. What can I say?
That was my favorite reply to the tweet that we were coming back yesterday. Was the one person who kept that joke going. I was like, you get it. I like it. Thank you so much.
Facts.
It's wondrous.
What are we talking about today, Garrett? In the new year, looking forward, a new patch on the horizon, 8.3.
Yeah,
Visions of N'Zoth, or Rise of N'Zoth, as everyone always calls it, which is wrong. But either is acceptable to me, because he is rising, he is visioning, he's also awakening. I don't mind calling it the Awakening of N'Zoth. I'm down with all that. Whatever you want to call that patch.
I feel like he's been pretty awake over the course of BFA. He's been doing some things. All right, maybe he's a little groggy.
He's been awake since Cataclysm. He loves it. He's been sitting up at night, concocting plans, making deals.
Right. You know, maybe in the beginning he hadn't quite fully woken up. He was still in his many slippers, because he would need a lot of slippers, got a lot of feet, and hadn't had his coffee yet. And that's why he was kind of in the shadows, pulling a few strings here and there, wasn't in our face. But now he is fully awake. He has had his... I'm gonna say N'Zoth is a 3-cup of coffee type of old guy. He's had his 3rd cup and he is ready. Dude, totally. At the time of recording this, we are a mere 6 days away from 8.3 releasing. It's here. I can feel the loving, wet, salty embrace of my tentacled overlord.
I think you're going to have too much fun in this patch, Garrett, and I'm a bit worried about you.
I'm excited about it, and I'm excited for this show, because it's going to be the first big major content patch since we've launched this podcast. And you and I have a bit of a dynamic, and I have no idea how it's going to surface on the show, but I'm excited for it, which is you play the living shit out of the PTR. I do, to my detriment, and it's not something I actually enjoy doing. I do it because, I kind of have like a responsibility to be up to date with the news and to kind of tell people what they want to know about it and answer questions about it and things like that, and make videos and content on it as well. But if it was up to me, if I was not a content creator, I wouldn't go anywhere near that PTR. But as it happens, I am a content creator. So you're absolutely right. I've been on there a lot. The one thing I don't do is raid testing. I refuse to raid test, because that's my one sacred area. Nice.
I think.
Nice. Well, I am a content creator, and I still avoid it like the plague. So I think it's going to be kind of interesting to get into. So like I am legitimately excited for 8.3, because I know pretty much all that awaits me, because I don't put myself into some spoiler-free bubble that I live within. But I'm excited to talk to you as I get into it, as someone kind of experiencing everything for the first time. But with that in mind, you served up, I think, just a great idea for a topic for today's episode, which is what do we think the best and the worst patches over WoW's extensive history are? And this is not, fine listeners, a complete history of all the patches. We're not going to talk about every patch. We're not going to talk about everything that happened in every patch.
That would be boring, Garrett. That would be the most boring podcast ever. I know that's what you wanted to do. I just want the internet to know. I was like, okay, let's do best and worst patches in WoW history. And Garrett was like, yes, what we'll do is I'll get a big list of all of the patches and all the different things that came in the patches. And we'll go through it with a fine-tooth comb. Every single little thing that happened. And, you know, also the little... And I was like, Garrett, this is showbiz, mate. Pull up your socks. Got to make this entertaining.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't care about the people. I don't care about keeping them entertained. No, I want my deep dive. And I was like, Garrett, some other time. And I allowed you to read me all of the details in private so that we didn't have to go over it all on this podcast. So people of the internet, I saved you from that. And Garrett did it very well. He was very good. His voice is sexy and enthralling, and I enjoyed it. But you wouldn't have. It would have been a 5-hour podcast. Our last podcast was 5 hours. We can't afford another 5-hour podcast.
When we finally launch some sort of crowdfunding for the show, that will be the bonus content for everyone. I will actually fly to England, and you will lay your head on my lap, and I will read you World of Warcraft stories. That's what we'll do.
I'd actually pay for that. Set that Patreon up. I'm going to donate. That's what I want.
That's
all I want from life now. That's basically all I want.
Be the best use of my time. The first time I ever went to Europe. It'd be the best.
Please make it happen. Oh God, please.
Whatever the case is, folks, I know everyone listening. You were probably going to want to chime in on this conversation, and I want you to. But let us know what your favorite and your least favorite things are. I typically with these kind of things, I get a lot of replies that start with "you missed," and no, I didn't. I just didn't mean to bring it up in the first place. So let me know what you liked, what you didn't like. And tweet at us at Garrett Art, at Taliesin Evitel, because we don't have an email yet.
Actually, that's something we should definitely sort out. That's definitely something we should do. You know, we're episode 3 now. We're like pros.
We are.
But anyway, when it comes to like the best and worst patches in WoW history, it's a funny topic because there is so much to talk about with all the different patches there have been and pre-patches and the idea of what makes a good and a bad patch in terms of content and the way it's delivered and in terms of amount of content and in terms of quality of life and gameplay improvements and other things that a patch will introduce. And yet, I already know that just mentioning that topic, the best and worst patches in WoW history, I can guarantee you that the vast majority of people, if we ask this chat now, would have the same answers for both best and worst patch, which is obviously something we'll bring up and we'll try and look a little bit beyond as well.
Yeah. So I figured why not start with essentially the clickbait, like the worst patches ever.
Yes, this is why I'm here.
Forget popular opinion. Taliesin, what do you think the worst patch in the history of World of Warcraft is?
Well, you know me, Garrett. I'm a crowd pleaser, and so I'm going to agree with everyone else and say that in my history playing WoW, and I should clarify that I started playing WoW in Wrath of the Lich King, right at the very beginning of Wrath of the Lich King. I stopped playing about halfway through Cataclysm, and I came back towards the end of Mists of Pandaria when Evitel got me back into the game again. So there's a big bit of WoW history that I wasn't available for and that I didn't see with my own eyes. In those early days in Wrath, I wasn't really paying attention to the patch cycle and what was being introduced and taken away to the game and what was being modified. So in my experience, the worst patch in the history of World of Warcraft is 6.1. I can't even remember if 6.1 even had a name. Warlords of Draenor, after the first raid of Warlords of Draenor came out, the Ogre place, Highmoor, and after Blackrock Foundry came out, both really good raids, by the way, there was a very long gap of basically no content at all. And then we got 6.1. Do you remember 6.1, Garrett?
Oh, I very much remember 6.1 because that was the notorious selfie cam patch, which everyone still to this day memes on. Like it hasn't died. Like meme status of how down and looked down upon this patch has not died off. I, however, will defend one aspect of 6.1, Tally. And do you know what it is?
Are you ready for the hate that's going to come your way? I hope you are.
Oh, bring it on. Because No, everyone is wrong. I know everyone has a different favorite race in World of Warcraft, but you're all wrong because the best race in World of Warcraft is the Blood Elves, and they got their updated models in 6.1.
Finally. Now, is that a good thing about 6.1, or is that is that really the fault of Warlords of Draenor for not including them in the original kind of lineup of redone models?
Damn, Tally, you could become a WoW YouTuber. You've got such hot takes. You should try that out.
There wasn't just the selfie cam in 6.1, it has to be said. There wasn't just the new Blood Elf models. There was also, it has to be pointed out, Twitter integration and Facebook integration with World of Warcraft.
Well, you had to, because what else would you do with the selfie cam?
Well, exactly. There was also some stuff with the heirlooms or something, and I believe there was also some stuff to do with Darkmoon Faire. In fact, you know very well, Garrett, that one of my favorite things about the whole of World of Warcraft is those cool videos they put out, the survival guides, right?
Yeah.
And you know the ones where Law basically comes along and just shouts at you for a couple of minutes about all the things that are going to be in the patch?
Yes, and folks, if you don't remember the 6.1 survival guide, we have it loaded up for you, and we are happy to remind you.
Really?
Yes.
You have that ready to go, Garrett?
Yes, I do. And you'll be able to see it but not hear it, so it's going to start playing now.
I can't wait. Let's go.
Patch 6.1 is adding a new chapter to Khadgar's legendary quest chain. Once you've completed the steps in Blackrock Foundry, Khadgar will continue in his mission to chase down Gul'dan by going after one of the Warlock's most trusted minions. As part of this step of the adventure, you'll be able to recruit an all-new legendary follower with a unique legendary trait. The Heirloom collection has been added, along with some massive improvements to the Heirloom system. All heirlooms that were sold for honor or justice points prior to Warlords of Draenor can now be purchased for gold. Once purchased, you can find them in the Heirloom collection for any and all characters on your Battle.net account. At first, brand new heirlooms will scale to level 60, but you can upgrade them to scale to level 90 or 100 using special tokens, which can also be purchased from the heirloom vendors. Racing is coming to the Darkmoon Faire. Once the fair opens, you'll be able to find the first racetrack by the docks on Darkmoon Island. You'll be racing against the clock, picking up power-ups and dodging obstacles to get the best time you can. The faster you complete the race, the better rewards you'll earn, including achievements, toys, and Darkmoon prize tickets. Patch 6.1 also brings some updates to the Garrison. We've made a lot of tweaks to the Garrison's interface elements and added some new content as well. You can now earn a Platinum medal for an exceptionally good score in an invasion. We've also added a new Visitors feature. Every day, an NPC will show up at your garrison with a quest for you. Each player can have a different visitor at their garrison each day, so you can visit a friend's garrison to do quests for other NPCs than the one that's currently visiting yours. In reward for your efforts, you can earn pets, gear, crafting reagents, and even items that will allow you to summon one of 6 new world bosses to fight in your garrison. We've also added the ability to share things you find in World of Warcraft on Twitter, directly from inside the game. You can enable this feature by opening your interface options, selecting the social menu on the left, checking the box to enable Twitter functionality, and then clicking on Sign In. That'll open a window to the Twitter website, where you can log into your Twitter account. Once you've authorized it for use in World of Warcraft, you'll see a small icon in your chat window when you loot items, earn achievements, or take screenshots. Clicking on that will open up the tweet window, where you can crop screenshots and edit your tweet before sending. These are only a few of the biggest features coming in patch 6.1, but there's plenty more. There's the updated Blood Elf model, improved colorblind support, several improvements to flight paths, and even a brand new ultra-rare mount to be earned, if you can find it. Be sure to check out our full patch notes for all of the details. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Draenor.
Garrett, is it over?
It's over.
I'm sorry, dude. I literally fell off my chair with boredom. about halfway through that.
God, when they get
Is
to
anyone still watching this podcast or listening to this podcast? I actually just fell off my chair with boredom. No, do you know what? Actually,
when they get to Twitter integration,
watching that back, genuinely, there's some really cool stuff in there, and like some stuff which I use all the time, and which has genuinely made the game better. Like the stuff with the.
As I was looking through old patches for this episode, I came to realize that I started really gravitating towards systems that I liked, like major quality of life improvements. That started to really pull me in a direction for my favorite patch in the history of WoW. And I gotta say, the heirloom tab is awesome. And when it wasn't in the game, it was terrible.
It's a fact. It's a fact. The heirloom tab is great. And when I think about when I think back to even Wolves Draenor, and I think about the things I remember most, apart from just the sheer boredom that came with, as time went on. Apart from that, I think about the visitor system in the garrisons. And I used that all the time, and even beyond World of Draenor, the visitor systems in the garrison was something I was still using quite a lot to get things. It's great.
You can go and see Ben Brode because you can't visit him at Blizzard anymore.
Oh gosh, yeah, exactly. Of course, that's the only time me and Ben ever hang out now. Yeah, I completely forgot. And, I remember going back there to get my Conga hat, which wasn't 6.1 still. But, so I found myself in the garrison doing quite a lot. And even the selfie camera is good. Like, there's no one who doesn't like the selfie camera. The selfie camera is really cool. It's a really good addition to the game. The problem was not the selfie camera. The problem was not that the heirloom tab wasn't like a good quality of life improvement. The problem wasn't that the new monsters in the garrison invasions weren't high quality. The problem wasn't that Khadgar's quest wasn't all that good, although it wasn't. It had Garona in it. That was cool. And Khadgar got stabbed by a poison dagger. It was really good. And you had to go and, find the serum that would make him better and things like that. Now, the problem was that was the patch. And it was a huge... It was a major patch. It was a point one after a time when we'd had no content in World of Draenor for a while, and at a time when we were all saying, okay, what World of Draenor really needs right now is a good, solid patch with a whole lot of content that we can sort of get our teeth into. There was no raid in that patch. There was no dungeon in that patch. There was no gameplay in that patch at all, apart from that short quest line, and it was a 0.1 patch. So what we're establishing here is that context. And when a patch comes out in the patch cycle is incredibly important, because if 6.1 had been 6.15 after 6.1 had introduced, a big new quest chain and new raids and new dungeons and things like that, and if it had come promptly on the heels of that 6.1, then all the stuff in 6.15 would have been awesome. We'd have gone, oh wow, yeah, okay, I really like the new heirloom stuff, and I like these garrison improvements, and I like the UI improvements, and wow, that new thing in the Dark Moon Fair, great, this is great fun. This will bide me over until 6.2. Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it's really just the 0.1 of it, right? Like it could have, if it was a 6 point anything 0.5, then I would have been like, oh yeah, this makes sense. But the fact that, as you said, it's a 0.1 is kind of crazy. So it's definitely, I was talking to folks on Twitter yesterday, asking them their opinion, and 6.1 came up many times, outside of people who were like anything BFA related, and I'm like, okay, way to take a stance, way to
well, that's the thing. Like 6.1 is memed as the obviously worst patch of all time in the modern era, certainly, like post Cataclysm or what have you, in the way that we wait for big 0.1 or 2 patches now, in a way that maybe we didn't in the very earliest days of WoW, because we know what to expect from them, and we know what we want from them.
Yeah.
And like 6.1 is the obvious choice. It's genuinely my choice, but it wouldn't surprise me. And I'm sure people are doing it in the chat or at homes thinking in their heads right now, people going, oh, actually, do you know what? Listening to that survival guide, that sounds better than BFA. It's become a bit of a thing now to say that WoD is better than BFA, and I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all, and I'm not going to agree with it. And there is nothing in BFA as bad as 6.1 or as disappointing as 6.1. And I will stand by that. I will fight you.
Oh, World of Warcraft reminds me so much of the Star Wars community at times.
Yes!
Because there's a lot of people going, were the prequels so bad now? And the answer is yes! Yes, they were!
You know, on that subject, if I ever think to myself, hey, maybe the prequels weren't so bad. Some prominent voices are defending the prequels these days. Maybe I'll just go back and check. It takes me half of the first credits crawl from Phantom Menace to go, oh, no, what was I even thinking?
Ooh. I will die on the episode 3 hill. I love it. I really do. But 1 and 2. Oh. I still have this bad taste in my mouth. Anyway, sorry, analogy getting run away with. Yeah, I think 6.1, like it's popularly held belief that it is the worst patch in history because I agree with it. I think it is. I think it's kind of the closest thing we'll ever reach to an objective truth with a take that is clearly opinion. So, although I don't know, I think of like other patches that kind of popped in my mind. Like I wasn't a huge fan of 8.1.5, but that's a 0.5 patch, right? It's a smaller patch by nature.
Your expectations are lower. Yeah.
Exactly.
Now 8.1.5 had its own problems in that again, and this is the whole context thing. Patches are worse, as someone just said in the chat, when players are already angry. So if you need a patch to kind of, in your mind, turn an expansion around or to kind of make up for some bad content that you feel came previously or something like that, then that puts so much more importance onto a patch, and the opportunity to be disappointed by it is so much higher. So yeah, 8.15 was a pretty solid 0.5 patch all told, but it wasn't what the game needed at that time. What the game needed right then was 8.2, which didn't come for months later. And we'll talk about patches in the context of BFA specifically in a little bit, because I think there's important things to be said about it. But yeah, I'd agree with 8.15.
Yeah. I was really thinking. I'm like, I didn't like Broken Shore. That kind of bummed me out, but it also came with a new raid. So it's like I don't have a strong argument for any patch besides 6.1. I did hear from a lot of folks that their kind of personally worst patch were ones that kind of took things away from their class that they personally was really important to them. I personally just have a very bad memory for those sorts of things, and I've also swapped classes so many times that it's not as much in my brain because I'm a filthy class jumper. So it's
right,
and that's so deeply personal, I feel.
Yeah,
I don't think we're ever gonna.
Well, my other least favorite patch that I can think of off the top of my head is 7.2. Which will be controversial because 7.2 is obviously slap bang in the middle of Legion.
Yeah, well, that would have been the Broken Shore patch. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of join you here because Broken Shore, like that was the first of what I'm calling the new trend of generic boring island edition. Because we have it. I'm not a big Mechagon fan, and it just reminds me of Broken Shore. It's like, well, here's a generic island to run around and get catch-up gear.
Absolutely. And for a 0.2, which was leading up to a raid and launched with loads 7.2. It launched with this whole new zone, which we had been to before in the pre-patch for Legion, granted, but with all these amazing things to do on it, supposedly. New reputation to kind of build up. It launched with the new dungeon. It launched with the promise of the new raid coming soon, TM. It launched with the quests enabled for the class mounts, which is something people had been excited about since the BlizzCon before. You could finally go and get those. It launched with the Mage Tower, which is one of the most best remembered features of Legion now, and one of the most loved features of Legion. So why don't people like 7.2, Garrett? Why don't you like 7.2? Why do you remember it so badly?
I think a lot of people
do. I just told you all the great stuff that was in it, Garrett.
I think a lot of people do like 7.2. I just really, for me, it comes down to like what sticks with me is the memory of a certain patch, and a lot of times that comes down to what am I doing on a daily basis. And for me, it was Broken Shore, and it bored me to tears. It's a great raid. It's a pretty good dungeon.
Well, here's the thing. The raid is great. The dungeon was complete lols because everyone hated it, because everyone had been so used to all the other dungeons in Mythic Plus by that point.
I didn't think it was a terrible dungeon. I actually rather enjoyed that dungeon.
No, I loved it. I thought it was a good dungeon as well. But the problem was people had been refining their Mythic Plus game in Legion for the entirety of 7.1, 7.15. And they got all of those dungeons down pat at that point. And that was the first time since Mythic Plus had ever been introduced that you'd thrown a new dungeon into the mix. So obviously everyone was instantly rubbish at it. And I think they tuned it a bit higher than most other dungeons as well, specifically because it was new.
God forbid you actually have to like learn something new and grow.
I know. Well, you know the community, friend. But no, I don't agree. I think it's a great dungeon. And still a dungeon which is hard to get past the final encounter in a pug group, who, if they don't know what they're doing.
Oh,
like,
God, first time I went in there, it was kind of it was a shit show, to borrow a phrase.
Oh, I don't approve of that language at all. But
clearly,
no. And like, it had some great RP in it. It had like flirty Maev and Illidan running up the stairs.
Oh my God, would they just bang already?
Oh, it made me feel a bit uneasy, that one, to be honest. I didn't want to turn my back on it.
You could cut the sexual tension with a knife.
Yeah, or with a glaive. Yeah, totally.
Oh, way better. On brand. Oh, they both use glaives. It works for both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But look, see how fondly we're both talking about 7.2, and yet I think to most people I could suggest 7.2 was a duff patch, and most people would agree it was certainly the worst major patch in Legion. I say this even as a Discipline Priest, and 7.2 was the patch where Discipline Priest finally got sorted into like the awesome, brilliant class it is right now. It underwent that massive change at the beginning of Legion, which made it the DPS and healing through DPS hybrid in inverted commas. And that was a great idea, which was really weak and horrible all the way through 7.15 and Emerald Nightmare. And then suddenly in 7.2 underwent these changes, which made it a legit fun, good spec. So as a Discipline Priest, I remember that fondly. Do you know what the first thing that happened to me? The first thing that happened to me when I started playing 7.2, the very first thing that happened, I went to the Broken Shore and I killed some mobs, just like I was told to, doing these missions. And the first thing that happened was that Velen's trinket, the legendary, dropped for me. My Biss trinket dropped on the first day of 7.2. My Biss legendary dropped. Like, there was no way that 7.2 could have done more to win me over.
You lucky bastard.
And yet... So yeah, overnight, like 7.2 started, and overnight, my class suddenly became a really good healer, suddenly became super fun to play, and I had my Biss legendary. I was in a good place to enjoy 7.2.
Still wasn't good enough for you.
We came in off the back of Nighthold, which I maintain I think is the best raid of Legion, and everything leading up to Nighthold was just like... Probably the best quality content in Legion, I think.
I love Nighthold. I rated the crap out of that.
It's such a great raid, like an awesome raid. But the thing that everyone hates about 7.2 is the time gating. And time gating, I almost feel is like the wrong word to use to describe it, because it wasn't really time gated. They just released something at a different date, which I don't think is time gated. Like, there's nothing you had to do to unlock the raid. Like, the raid just released 12 weeks later.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that's time gating. I think that's literally just something having a different release date. Now, the problem was it felt time gated because there was this illusion of having quests that you had to do to unlock the raid with those, because the story quests at the very beginning on the first day were quite good fun.
Yeah. Any time they added on to the Order Hall campaign as well, I was happy, because I thought that was just, and still is, I think, a crowning achievement of Legion. But I mean, a lot of the island mechanic of building and everything, right? Like you mentioned the Mage Tower, you couldn't access that day one. You had to wait till it was built.
No, exactly. And I remember the salt when the Mage Tower did actually release and did open up for people to go into. And the amount of crying that happened when people couldn't complete it first time. Oh, and how difficult it was. People hated it. They really did. But of course, it came into its own later on. Really,
hindsight is 2020, right? But I do think because of how difficult it was, that it would have been totally fine to just have it there, sitting there waiting for you on day one. Like, go get your butt kicked. The progression here will be through the difficulty of the content, not through waiting to start it. I
actually completely agree with that. Yeah. And I feel they missed a trick there. In hindsight, it's easy to say in hindsight, I guess.
Of course. And big bold letters on that. I think that's very, very true. We are much past it at this point, and I think we can kind of agree on that. But the only other thing I would bring up with 7.2 is you mentioned context is really important when we were talking about 6.1, and I think it's really important here because biggest Arthas fanboy on the planet, could not have enough like love letters to write to Wrath of the Lich King. If I take my Arthas fanboyism out, I think Legion is the greatest expansion in the history of the game.
I don't disagree with you. I don't necessarily agree with you, but I don't disagree with you.
Right. I think the context as well, like when you look at Legion as a whole, as an entire unit, and starting strong, even with, again, time gating leading up to Nighthold, and ending strong with Argus, kind of nestled in the middle there is 7.2, and spending all this time on Broken Shore and dealing with the building of structures and everything. So I don't think 7.2... I think we're having this conversation just to have something a little interesting outside of 6.1. We figured it out. That's the answer. Moving on. I don't think 7.2 even comes close to being as bad as 6.1, but it does stick out in my brain because of just how good Legion was as a whole.
So do you think that people are harder on 7.2 because Legion was so good? Because I would actually argue the opposite. I would actually say that people they remember 7.2 better than they probably should. And I think for the proof of that, you can compare it to the reaction to 8.2, the rise of Ashara, which on the face of it is a very, very similar patch. Except if you put them side by side, I don't think anyone could really honestly argue that 8.2 isn't a vastly superior patch to 7.2. What do you think?
I think that's one of the most unpopular opinions that I hold. I prefer 8.2 to 7.2 greatly.
Yeah, well, I think most people do, don't they? Although maybe they don't prefer it, but I think most people can appreciate that compared to 7.2, it's a better patch. Yeah. It's got 2 huge new areas to explore as opposed to just the one in the Broken Shore. So it's literally just bigger. It's got the raid came out after 2 weeks. 2 weeks after 8.2 launched, the Eternal Palace launched. Whereas we had to wait for 12 weeks on the Broken Shore for that to happen, with not much to do on the Broken Shore. Remember, we had those quests from Khadgar every week. Every week, we thought to ourselves, maybe this will be the week. Maybe this is the time that finally we'll have something interesting to do, and not just one of the things that we've been doing on the Broken Shore as a matter of course anyway. And every week, he really set the scene with that very first mission that he gave us, where he was like, go and find 2,500 nether shards. And you're like, what? Oh, okay, fine. That's what I was doing anyway, but now I'll go and do it for you. And you gather all these nether shards and you take them back to him. And he goes, oh, lols, I only needed 1. Here's 2,400 back. And that was as interesting as those missions got.
Yeah.
And it was always something like go and kill an elite. It's like, that's what I've been doing, waiting for this quest to pop. And it was really bad times. And people kind of forget that. But 8.2 had none of that. The raid launched a couple of weeks after the patch. There was infinite amounts more to do. If you didn't like Nazjatar, it was quite likely you'd like Mechagon, and vice versa. If you liked both of them, great. There was the new dungeon, the Mechagon dungeon. It was just objectively, in my mind, in my subjective opinion, it was objectively a better patch. And that's science. You can't argue with science. I've scienced that, okay? So good. No one can disagree. And yet, I've got a feeling people will remember 7.2 much more fondly than they do 8.2. And I think a lot of that will have to do with the fact that people remember Legion a lot more fondly than they remember BFA. There is another reason for it as well.
That's fair.
I don't think it's just that Legion was a better expansion, therefore its worst bits are remembered like better than they should be. I think time frame, we're talking about context a lot with what makes a good and bad patch here. And time frame is incredibly important. It's one of the reasons 6.2 was so bad. 6.1, sorry, was so badly received, is because we waited a long time for it, and when we got it, it wasn't enough to keep us going for the amount of time that it needed to before Tanan Jungle and Hellfire Citadel came out. And even if 8.2 is a much bigger, much more entertaining patch than 7.2, the fact is, it's been with us. It took A, a lot longer to get here than 7.2 did, relatively, and B, has been with us a lot longer. I don't know if you watched my last YouTube video, Garrett, but I actually looked into this in quite some depth. And from the start of the expansion to the 0.3 patch, now that we're going into 8.3, it has taken BFA 5 months longer to get to the 0.3 patch than it took Legion. 5 months. If we were on Legion time right now, we'd have had Visions of N'Zoth 5 months ago.
That's
Like,
kind of...
that blows my mind.
BFA's pacing doesn't seem as bad to me as something like Warlords of Draenor, but we're kind of getting close to that,
5 months,
actually.
Garrett. 5 months. And so any patch that you look at in BFA, good or bad, it's had to have been that much better to keep people playing that much longer. Because, yeah, okay, maybe 7.2 kind of sucked, and it sucked for 12 weeks while there was nothing really happening. And then the raid came out and it was a lot better, but we still had to wait another 77 days before we got 7.3 in Argus. But also Argus had been on the PTR from pretty much the second that the raid launched as well. So there was always, if you were really bored of 7.2, there was always Argus on the PTR that you could look at. The way the story has worked in BFA with them trying to keep things secret and whatnot, it took a long time for 8.3 to come onto the PTR. So they could keep all of that N'Zoth stuff semi-secret and not let you know that Sourfang was dead and that Sylvanas was doing her stuff and things like that. So all of those things combined, and the fact that we've had literally months more in 8.2 that we had in 7.2, that's all really important context. I still maintain that if BFA had been released on the same schedule as Legion, i.e. a patch every 77 days, I still maintain that it would be a much better received patch.
I think that goes a long way. It's funny because my sense of pacing for BFA is that I've kind of enjoyed it, but I think what you're doing is kind of like crystallizing and clarifying my original opinion that when I heard Classic was coming out, I thought to myself, oh, this is wonderful. I'll play Classic when I'm bored with Retail, and I'll play Retail when I'm bored with Classic. And I think that's exactly what happened.
Okay, so you have done that kind of alternating sort of thing, which they promised they weren't intending people to do and that they wouldn't organize patch releases around. They promised, Garrett.
I honestly sort of believe them. I think I think things are gonna hit when they can get them out into the world. So I think right now it just happens to be working out in our favor, but who knows? So someone out there with a tinfoil hat is going to be yelling at their speakers right now as they listen to me say that. But so I definitely have a personal bias in that regards. But again, for me, it's like it's not as bad as Draenor, so I'm fine with it in terms of its pacing. Thanks for watching, everyone. Part 2, covering the best patches in WoW's history, will be coming later this week. The entire uncut conversation is available right now on the audio feed, which is available everywhere you'd like to get your podcasts. And as always, please like and subscribe for more WoW Killer.